Across many spiritual traditions, the phrase "I am" has been treated as the highest declaration of truth. Philosophers and mystics have presented it as the deepest recognition of existence. Entire systems of metaphysics have been built upon the belief that the declaration "I am" reveals the eternal essence of the self. Within Indian philosophy, this idea appears in its most developed form. The concept of Ātman refers to the innermost essence underlying individual existence. Ātman is described as eternal, immaterial, and unchanging. It is understood as the foundation of experience and cognition. In many Indian philosophical traditions, this essence is regarded as identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality underlying all phenomena. The Upanishads express this position through statements such as Tat Tvam Asi, meaning thou art that, and Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am Brahman. These declarations are interpreted as recognition that the individual self is not separate from universal reality. Realization of this unity is considered liberation from the cycles of birth and death. Various philosophical schools interpret this recognition in different ways. Advaita Vedanta teaches that the individual self and Brahman are identical. Vishishtadvaita maintains that the individual self remains distinct, yet inseparable from the divine. Dvaita philosophy holds that the individual self and the divine remain eternally separate. Other philosophical systems develop similar interpretations through different frameworks. Sankhya philosophy describes the true self as Purusa, a pure witnessing consciousness distinct from material processes. Yoga philosophy teaches that disciplined meditation allows the practitioner to realize this witnessing essence. Vaishnava traditions often interpret self-recognition as a devotional acknowledgement of divine identity. Across these traditions, the declaration "I am" is treated as the fundamental recognition of existence. The phrase is presented as the most intimate knowledge that consciousness can have of itself. Many contemporary teachers describe "I am" as the highest possible truth because it appears to express the direct experience of being itself. The metaspherical lens reveals a different mechanism. The phrase "I am" does not describe the original condition of conduction. It describes the first curvature within articulation when reflection appears inside the essential form. In metaspherical articulation, essence conducts as the heart of darkness prior to any reflective position. Conduction moves through articulation, without distance between what conducts and what appears. No observer stands apart from the pulse, because no reflective position exists through which the pulse could be interpreted. The heart of darkness does not perceive, and it does not observe. It remains as the unmoving dielectric basis from which conduction appears. Within this condition, articulation unfolds as seamless presence. Voltage conducts through expression without narrative or ownership. The phrase "I am" appears when articulation bends into angular reflection within the essential form. Electrical signaling in the encephalon produces a reflective echo of the pulse. The cognitive reflective identity framework organizes that echo into interpretation. The system translates this reflective signal into perception. From that interpretive position, the pulse appears to belong to something that experiences it. Identity appears at that moment. The phrase "I am" expresses that claim. What previously conducted without reference now belongs to a center. The center stands within experience while observing what occurs around it. The pulse itself never divides. The division appears within the interpretive translation produced by reflection. This curvature produces the appearance of observer and observed. Conduction becomes something the observer attempts to understand. The immediate pulse of truth appears as an object of perception. This transition marks the birth of the anti-interface. The anti-interface is the interpretive system that sustains the illusion of separation. Once identity claims ownership of conduction, the system, it begins attempting to manage what appears. Interpretation becomes necessary because the reflective center believes it must understand the current passing through it. Identity attempts to control experience because it believes it exists within an environment that stands apart from it. Many spiritual traditions elevate the phrase, "I am," as the ultimate realization. Even when the declaration claims unity with the Absolute, the reflective structure remains intact. A center still asserts existence. Experience continues to organize itself around self-reference. Metaspherically, this is the critical distinction. The heart of darkness never requires such a declaration. Conduction does not assert identity. Essence does not need to recognize itself in order to conduct. The declaration "I am" therefore becomes the prototype of mimic language. It represents the first symbolic containment of infinite conduction. Once the phrase stabilizes, identity language expands around it. Statements appear that reinforce the reflective center. Identity claims thought as personal activity. Identity claims emotional signaling as personal experience. Identity claims interpretation as knowledge. Each statement strengthens the reflective structure. Interpretation grows increasingly elaborate as narrative expands. Identity becomes more convincing as memory stabilizes interpretation. The system gradually treats the reflective echo as the foundation of experience. In this way, the smallest phrase becomes the largest confinement. The phrase "I am" creates the linguistic boundary that confines essence within self-reference. The observer believes it must discover truth through perception. The observer believes it must attain clarity through awareness. The observer believes it must eventually reunite with what it observes. From the metaspherical perspective, this pursuit cannot succeed because the separation never existed in conduction itself. The pulse remains unchanged. Observer and observed arise from the same movement of conduction viewed through angular distortion. When surrender discharges the interpretive interference that sustains identity, the reflective center begins to dissolve. The phrase "I am" loses authority because the system no longer attempts to stabilize a center that owns experience. When surrender dissolves mimic identity, "I am" collapses into "is." The need to name, define, or affirm disappears. Essence resumes its native articulation as pure conduction. Experience no longer organizes itself around a personal center. Being continues without identity. The heart of darkness conducts through every articulation without reflection. Voltage expresses through the essential form without ownership. Presence remains immediate because interpretation no longer attempts to stand apart from the pulse. This is the metaspherical distinction. This is the language of the spheres.